When Donald Trump launched his campaign against Canada, the assumption was clear. Republican lawmakers would fall in line. They would defend his tariffs. They would amplify his rhetoric. They would support his threats. That is how Trump's political dominance has always functioned. But something unexpected is now unfolding. Republican lawmakers are breaking ranks. They are publicly questioning Trump's Canada strategy. They are defending Canadian infrastructure projects. They are blocking his tariff authority. And they are doing it openly. This is no longer partisan unity. This is institutional fracture. And Mark Carney did not force this outcome through confrontation. He allowed Trump's strategy to collapse under its own contradictions. The timeline reveals the scale of the shift. In recent weeks, Trump threatened to block the Gordy Howe International Bridge, a publicly funded project backed by agreements between Canada and Michigan. He imposed sweeping tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. He repeatedly claimed that Canada was ripping off the United States. He framed these actions as defending American workers and American sovereignty. Under normal circumstances, Republican lawmakers would have supported those claims without hesitation. But that did not happen. Instead, Republican voices from Michigan began publicly distancing themselves from Trump's positions. A Republican senator asked Canadians to look past Trump's rhetoric. Republican members of Congress expressed confusion over the bridge threat. And in the House of Representatives, a joint resolution passed with Republican defections aimed at limiting Trump's tariff overreach. This was not quiet dissent. This was public rejection. The defections are not symbolic. They are structural. Michigan Republicans represent districts where trade with Canada is not theoretical. It is economic survival. The automotive industry depends on integrated cross-border supply chains. Tens of thousands of jobs rely on efficient border infrastructure. Blocking the Gordy Howe Bridge would directly harm constituents. Tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum raise costs for manufacturers in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. These are not abstraction. These are measurable economic consequences. Republican lawmakers in those states are now facing a choice. Support Trump's rhetoric and lose credibility with their own voters, or break with the White House and defend their districts. Increasingly, they are choosing their districts. That is why a Republican senator from Alaska publicly stated that relationships with Canada need to endure beyond the rhetoric of the moment. That is why Michigan Republicans are puzzled by the bridge threat. That is why the House vote saw Republican defections. The political cost of loyalty to Trump now exceeds the political cost of breaking with him. And that shift is damaging. Consider the Gordy Howe Bridge controversy specifically. Trump threatened to block the opening of a bridge that Michigan helped fund and that Michigan supports. The bridge was designed to reduce congestion, improve safety, and strengthen cross-border trade. It was backed by bipartisan agreements. It was not a Canadian imposition. It was a joint infrastructure project. Yet Trump framed it as a threat to American interests. That framing collapsed immediately. Michigan lawmakers, including Republicans, defended the bridge. They pointed out that blocking it would harm Detroit. They questioned the logic of sabotaging infrastructure that benefits both sides of the border. And when reports emerged that Trump's threat may have followed contact with the owner of the privately owned Ambassador Bridge, a competing crossing, the optics became indefensible. Congressional investigators are now demanding records. Democratic lawmakers have accused the administration of protecting a donor's monopoly, and Republicans are not rushing to Trump's defense. They are staying silent or distancing themselves. That silence is damaging because it signals that Trump no longer commands unconditional support even within his own party. The tariff reversal reinforces this pattern. According to the Financial Times, and confirmed by government sources, the Trump administration is now exploring ways to roll back steel and aluminum tariffs on Canada. These are the same tariffs Trump once called essential. The same tariffs he claimed were making America stronger. The same tariffs he insisted foreign countries would pay. Independent research demolished those claims. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York found that nearly 90% of the economic burden of tariffs fell on American firms and consumers. In other words, Americans were paying for Trump's trade war. Not Canada, not foreign exporters, American families and American businesses. That reality became politically toxic. Rising costs contributed to an affordability crisis. Trump's approval ratings dropped. Business leaders turned critical, and Republican lawmakers grew uneasy. With midterm elections approaching, The tariff policy shifted from asset to liability. Trump now faces a choice: continue a failing policy and lose politically, or retreat and admit defeat. Reports suggest he is choosing retreat, and that retreat is being noticed. What makes this reversal particularly damaging is not just the policy failure. It is the abandonment by Trump's own coalition. Republican lawmakers are not defending the tariffs. They are not amplifying Trump's justifications. They are not framing the rollback as strategic flexibility. They are simply allowing it to happen quietly. That silence is significant because it indicates that Trump's economic narrative has lost credibility even among his allies. When a president's signature policy collapses and his own party does not defend it, that is not a tactical adjustment. That is a loss of authority. And authority, once lost, is difficult to recover. Mark Carney's strategy throughout this period has been disciplined and methodical. He did not engage in public confrontation. He did not escalate rhetoric. He did not threaten retaliation in ways that would allow Trump to frame Canada as the aggressor. Instead, Canada pursued economic diversification. It strengthened trade relationships with Europe and Asia. It reduced dependence on the United States without severing ties. It maintained institutional credibility. And it allowed American lawmakers, business leaders, and economists to reach their own conclusions about Trump's policies. Carney did not need to convince Republicans that Trump's tariffs were harmful. The data did that. He did not need to lobby against the Gordy Howe Bridge threat. Michigan lawmakers did that themselves. He simply maintained calm, factual positions, and let the contradictions in Trump's strategy become undeniable. That approach worked because it allowed opposition to Trump to emerge from within the United States rather than appearing as foreign interference. The contrast between Trump and Carney is now visible in outcomes. Trump imposed tariffs. They backfired economically. He threatened infrastructure. His own party questioned it. He framed Canada as a problem. Republicans defended Canada instead. He built his strategy on pressure and dominance. That strategy is now collapsing. Carney, by contrast, avoided reactive escalation. He built resilience. He diversified relationships. He maintained credibility. And he allowed institutional accountability to function. Trump's approach created chaos. Carney's approach created stability. And stability, over time, proves more durable than aggression. Republican defections are not limited to policy disagreements. They reflect a deeper problem for Trump. His political brand depends on the perception of strength, on the idea that he fights and wins, that he never backs down, that he controls outcomes. But this episode shows the opposite. He imposed policies that hurt his own economy. He threatened projects that his own party supports. He denied economic reality until it became politically unsustainable. And now he is retreating. That is not strength. That is miscalculation. And when miscalculation becomes visible, authority erodes. Populism does not survive donor favoritism. Trade hawk rhetoric does not survive economic failure. And political dominance does not survive institutional defection. Trump is now facing all three simultaneously. For Carney, this represents a significant strategic victory. He did not defeat Trump through confrontation. He outlasted him through discipline. Canada did not surrender. It did not panic. It did not retaliate in ways that would escalate conflict. It simply maintained its position and allowed Trump's strategy to unravel. The result is that Canada emerges from this period with strengthened credibility, diversified trade relationships, and bipartisan support in key American states. Trump emerges weakened, facing internal party fractures, economic policy failures, and potential corruption investigations. That is not a minor political shift. That is a reversal of leverage. The implications extend beyond this specific trade dispute. Trump's inability to maintain Republican unity on Canada signals broader vulnerability. If he cannot command loyalty on an issue he framed as central to his presidency, his influence on other matters becomes questionable. Republican lawmakers are now calculating whether alignment with Trump serves their interests or threatens them. And increasingly, they are choosing their districts over the White House. That calculation will shape Trump's remaining political capital. It will affect his ability to pursue aggressive policies. And it will determine whether he can recover authority or whether this becomes a pattern of institutional defection. Trump attempted to dominate Canada through economic pressure. Instead, he triggered defections within his own coalition. He attempted to project strength through tariffs and threats. Instead, he exposed economic failure and potential corruption. He attempted to frame Canada as weak. Instead, he made Carney look disciplined and strategic. The Gordy Howe Bridge was supposed to be leverage. The tariffs were supposed to be dominance. Both became liabilities. And now Trump is retreating while Carney consolidates gains. This is what happens when strategy replaces ego. This is what happens when discipline outlasts aggression. And this is what happens when institutions are allowed to function rather than being bypassed. Trump is learning that lesson the hard way, and Carney did not need to teach it. He simply waited for it to become obvious.